What's going on, y'all? Everybody, this is Alfie D, and place to be, the place to be is Streets Talk podcast. And today, we have a great interview. Today, we have this man basically started from the bottom. Now he's almost at the top, pretty much at the top here in the city, in our neighborhood. This man pretty much been born and bred here in Baltimore City. He went to the University of Maryland, also University of the University of Baltimore County as well, where he got his master's degree. Also, this man been a community organization, been a community organizer for some years now, and wanted to step on up to be a councilman. Councilman of the eighth district, Councilman Kristerfer Burnett. How you doing today,
Thank
sir?
you, thank you. Hey, I'm doing all right. Hanging in there, trying to make it, trying to keep pushing the city forward. But I do want to thank you for the opportunity to come and speak to your listeners today.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you coming on here to speak to your constituents. And basically, what I wanted to bring you on here today is because there's a lot of people out here right now that don't really. I mean, they know you. They see your face on TV. They see you. With the human trafficking campaign. They see you in the streets. I done seen you out in the streets with a broom. I seen you out here with trash bags. I seen you out here with your sleeves rolled up. So I mean, you're in the community. You're out here helping. You're doing the things. I done spoke with you many a times on several different things, and you was always there in the community. So I feel as though it's like I feel like I'm supposed to be sitting up here telling the people how great you are, but I'm gonna let you do that for me.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah, a little bit about me. I ended up in the Edmonton Village area about 10 years ago as a third generation homeowner there. My dad actually grew up in the village. My grandfather moved there in 1967 when he came here from South Carolina to start his family here. My dad's wedding gift to me and my wife after we graduated from University of Maryland was cheap rent for a year. And in that time, it was just trying to help us get on our feet. And it was really the best thing he could have done, and a gift that continued to give to me and my wife. Because, we settled right in, got involved in our local community association, started advocating for just improvements, at the Edmonton Village Shopping Center and healthy food options. And at the time, I was working as a community organizer. I worked at a labor union at one point, worked for a community development corporation at one point, but again, also served in my local community association, just trying to help out and lend a hand. And through that work, started to get more involved in, city politics and just really just paying more attention as to what was happening, what wasn't happening in our communities. And the more I continued to look and advocate, it became apparent that, more work needed to be done that really involved the community and showed leadership at the local level. And so after talking over my family and friends and, and also just, working and people in the neighborhood asking me if I'd ever thought about running for office, it was really never a lifelong plan. I mean, my education is in public policy, but I was never trying to be a politician, if that makes sense. I wanted to help write policy. I wanted to advocate, but I didn't necessarily need to be in that position. But when the community pushes you to step up, you got to listen. And so in 2015, right after the uprising, I ended up launching my campaign and knocked on over 10,000 doors. But a lot of folks had already known me. At that point, I was helping to run the Edmonton Village Farmers Market. I was running Neighbors Without Borders, which was an advocacy group trying to leverage improvements for the Edmonton Village Shopping Center and along the corridor. And so folks knew who I was. But being a pretty young guy, they also were asking me pretty regularly, how old are you? It was a pretty common question.
Yeah.
Because, I was young but ambitious. And from there, I ended up winning in the 2016 city council election. It was a very difficult race, but I think the connection to the community is what pushed me over the top. Folks knew who I was. And thankfully, in that term, I was blessed to get another one based on the work I did over the last 4 years. So I was reelected this November to my second term on the city council. And it really just, it's an honor and a privilege. It's something I don't take lightly, because I know, the expectations are incredibly high for this community that has been disinvested for a long time, and not just the Evanston Village area. I represent over 30 neighborhoods, 40,000 people. The district stretches from the bottom, which is like the Beachfield, Irvington area, through the Edmonton Avenue corridor, up through Cooks Lane, and I go all the way up Forest Park, into the Forest Park, Howard Park communities as well, and top out at Liberty Heights Avenue. So it's actually the second largest geography on the council, and like I said, around 40,000 people. And so it's a lot of issues, a lot of diverse communities, but a lot of need. And so I've been known as the Evanston Village guy or area guy because that's where it's the most needed, in my opinion. Not that other parts of my district don't need me, and when they call, I absolutely run the support and see how I can be helpful for them. But this area, both just the personal connection for me and the the amount of challenges that we have. It was a strong community at one point, and it still can be, and in some ways still is. There's still a lot of long-term residents, which is what kept me here, with just so much story, so much history. People don't leave. They come right, and if they do, they come back. And so for me, that was a privilege to continue to serve in this work. And yeah, I'm happy to talk about policy or ideas, any questions you have, but that's who I am.
Yeah, exactly. So for one thing I want to do is I want to thank you, because we all know we suffered a little bit of a, kind of a tragedy, because the Emerson Village Shopping Center, to me, that was like my childhood playground. We went from carrying bags to hanging out, and that's how I got really, in touch with a lot of my people in my community, was hanging in Emerson Village Shopping Center, from the barbershop closing down. That's if not the only black-owned business that's up here in this area, but I know it had to be one of the oldest, if not the oldest. I think they've been here since the 60s. So right there, that was near and dear to my heart. And then I want to thank you for being up there late at night, out of nowhere, out there, giving us the breaking news and reports and things like that, because I had not to say the pleasure, but I hadn't been coming home, and I hadn't catch a little bit of the fire, and still a little upsetting to me. That's twice in 1 year. So right now, do you have any other updates or anything what's going on, or anything, any concerns or anything like that for the people in the community that want to know a little bit of things, because there's a lot of stores up there. There's a lot of older folks around here in this neighborhood that depend on Family Dollar and things like that. So anything, any new news or anything that's going on with that?
Yeah. So right now, it's under investigation. It definitely is a devastation to the community. I was actually, in fact, just yesterday, I was waiting in line at the Giant just across the way, and a lady in front of me, I don't think she knew who I was, but she wanted to talk about it. And one of the things that she mentioned was like how affordable the Family Dollar was for her, and that she was going to have to go out to the West Side Shopping Center and take a couple buses in order to replace the goods that she was buying there, because she couldn't afford to take some of the things at the Giant. And so, that's always that kind of constant reminder that people are really, really not doing well economically, and not just in this community, but across the city, especially, it's magnified now by being in the pandemic. And so I think the loss of it is definitely devastating for people, for businesses, for the community, all of the above. As far as updates, it's being investigated. I don't have any information at this time as far as what the cause was or what the recovery timeline will be. If the folks recall, the last fire was in November 2019, and the recovery from that took several months, and it still was ongoing. They had not begun to build in that space, and so these investigations can take several months. Of course, the second I get any information, I will absolutely share it out with the community. But, right now, the initial stages are always trying to stabilize the building, making sure it's safe. And, so inspectors are on site. They were on site yesterday. I was up there yesterday as well, and can confirm that both fire investigators and the owner of the property's team was on site as well, trying to figure out what the cause was so that they can try and have a faster resolution, because the last time it took 3 to 4 months to get an answer on the cause, which they ended up not being able to identify a cause from the 2019 fire, and that was simply because it burned so long.
Yes.
That there was no material left for them to figure out what may have initiated the fire. But there is a couple of things that do stand out.
Uh-huh.
That I actually have a meeting with Mayor Scott this week to talk about. So in both fires, it was continued as long as they were because of a ruptured gas line. And in talking to the fire department on site on Saturday night while the fire was raging, I could hear I could hear on the fire chief radio that BG&E had arrived and they were trying to access the gas line to get it turned off, and eventually they did. But in talking to him, one of the things he mentioned was that the infrastructure is so old that, to have 5 or 6 businesses on one gas line and the fire gets into that line, it makes the fire way more devastating than it probably would be otherwise. And so we're going to be talking about, putting together recommendations for the ownership to upgrade their infrastructure on site, especially so that kind of thing doesn't happen. It needs to be modernized. I mean, as you know, it's one of the oldest shopping centers in the country, and actually some believe it's the first of that design in the Northeast region. And so it has a tremendous amount of history and meaning to this community. We have to make those improvements, but the challenge is it's private property. So as much as, I absolutely have been advocating before I was in office, while I've been in office, due to the ownership to make the necessary both infrastructure upgrades and modernization of the facility, we can't make them do it. And that's been the biggest heartbreaker for me. It's not that, you want to always be able to tell somebody how to run their business, but for me, this is something that is so critical and so important to this community that I want it taken as seriously as you all take it, right?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So our hope is that this will be a wake-up call for the ownership team, because, look, them not having tenants is not good for their business, right? So they're going to feel the pinch. And so I think we may be at a time now where they will take the city serious and our calls for modernization, which is in response to what I'm hearing every day from my constituents.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you go back and look at all the pictures of Emerson Village Shop Center, like you said, I think it is the first of its kind on the East Coast. The other one was over in California back in, I think, in the 50s or something like that. But the same infrastructure and everything has been the same ever since then. So it haven't been no upgrades, pretty much, only but the signs and things like that. So that right there, I can kind of believe that, that played a big factor on why it burnt so fast and so quickly. Exactly. But I want to change topics for a second. My daughter right now, she's in in school. They talk about social studies, and we're trying to explain about the different branches and everything. So a lot of people don't know exactly what is the job as a city councilman.
Yeah, it's a great question, and one that I definitely glad she asked, and we definitely try to push the word out, because there is some confusion about with the councilman versus delegate versus senator versus congressperson, and so forth. So essentially, if you think about your early civics classes, we learn that there's usually 3 branches of government, and oftentimes there's a focus on the congressional branches, right? But our local government is broken down in the same way, and so we have the administrative branch of government, the administration, which is the mayor's office. The mayor controls all of the city agencies, their operations, how they run. Like the day-to-day running of the city is done almost exclusively by the mayor's office. You then have the legislative branch of government. And so when we think about the national level, the legislative branch is Congress. Well, in Baltimore, the legislative branch is your city council. So the city council is made up of 14 council districts. Each district has about the same number of people. Boundaries change every census, so some of the neighborhoods will shift in a couple of years, but essentially there's 14 of us that represent about 40,000 people each, and we represent the legislative branch of government. You also have your council president, which is elected as a citywide representative, so that's your council rep that's like across the whole city, and that is Councilman Mosby, Council President Mosby, Mayor Scott are in the top of those positions. And then your legal branch of government is the court system. And so those are the breakdowns. The council itself, our power is solely rests in the ability to write and approve laws. We often get calls for a lot of things, but the only real authority I have is to write laws. And so, whether that's, I've done a lot of work on human trafficking, and I've written laws that, work on in training hotel workers on how to identify things that stand out to them or signage. I've done work on affordable housing and government operations, but essentially my ability is to propose ideas, propose laws, and then the council votes on them. So no one council member is any stronger than the others because each of us carries one vote. In order to pass a bill, we need 8 votes to pass a bill, a majority. And so that requires a lot of lobbying and talking to colleagues and working with communities to advocate because, like I said, I only carry one vote. So, people may want to see certain things happen, but a lot of it requires negotiation skills and the ability to build relationships and work across different ideologies because every council member is different. Everyone has different priorities, different districts, different things that they care about. And so much of my day is spent thinking through challenges that arise in the city and trying to figure out, is there a way to legislate a fix for this? Now, there may not always be a bill. Sometimes that means I just need to work with the mayor's office to make a change, right? If there's like a DPW water billing problem or, a lot of these issues that come up in the news aren't really within the purview of the city council, but it doesn't mean that that's where I put my other hat on. It's just community advocate. Hey, Mr. Mayor, this is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm hearing. Can we make these changes to address the needs of the community? And so part of my job is lobbying and advocating for the community. Part of my job is legislating and voting. And so that, I hope that answers the question. But so that's pretty much what the city council does.
Yeah.
And we because we differ from our equivalent would be the state delegation, our state delegates. They're the legislative branch at the state. The governor is the administrator. And so sometimes there may be issues that are at the state level, right? So when we talk about schools, yes, which are controlled by the state, and the school board, or policing, which is controlled by the state, those issues I may take to our state delegates and say, hey, can you guys help me out with this issue? Or can you put a bill in to work on this issue? Or I need to work with the governor's office to deal with things like unemployment and stuff like that. So a lot of it's working across different government agencies. Some of it's working among the council, but most of my day is spent, answering constituent calls, constituent emails, trying to follow up and make sure things get done. So it's a pretty tough job there.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty tough job.
So basically, it sounds like a bunch. It's like 14 CEOs of different districts basically come together to basically try to make their company, which is Baltimore City, a better place. That's what it sounds like. Breaking it down in layman's terms. Is that true?
That's a way to think about it.
Okay, yeah. Exactly. So that right there be able to help out a lot of people that don't know. A lot of people might think that you might have some kind of power as though over the police inside the cities, or basically like a mayor of things like that. But like you said, you're basically developing bills, trying to get them passed, and doing a lot of lobbying, trying to move things, and also for the little things in the neighborhood that little nuisance things like you said, DPW and trash and things like that, that your office gets a lot of calls and things like that on.
Yeah.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, no 2 days are alike, but yeah, that's a great way to think about it. Like we're 14 individuals that represent a bunch of different issues, and we all advocate to make things done, get things done. But like I said, it's a great way to frame it. I actually hadn't thought about it that way, like a small CEO, because people think we're all like little mini mayors. We're not. Like the mayor is the mayor. I mean, the structure of Baltimore's government is very mayoral focused.
Yes.
There's some cities and municipalities that have very strong councils, and the mayor is weak. We're not one of those. We have one of the strongest mayoral controlled form of governments in the country, actually. St. Louis is probably the only similarly sized city that has a stronger mayor than we do. And when I say strong, I mean like complete control over the budget, complete control over the spending of all the agencies. There's other, jurisdictions that a lot of that would come through the council, but our government just wasn't built that way. And so, it doesn't mean that we're off the hook for the direction that the city goes, but it does mean that we're not necessarily on equal footing with the mayor.
Yeah, exactly.
I do try.
Exactly. I want to touch on human trafficking for a little bit before we because I see the time. I know you have to get out of here soon, but I just want to touch on that because I know that's like basically one of your babies since you've been inside the office. And what for human trafficking, because we all know that's been going on for years. But for the last past, I would say maybe 15 years, it seems like it's been getting stronger and stronger. We've been having a lot of different I want to say different black, brown kids that have been coming up missing, things like that. Also, you have people who's coming in from other countries illegally and things like that, and they bring it over here on thinking they're coming over for a better life, in which they're not coming for the better life. They're coming over here to be, in the human trafficking slaves in the human trafficking. So, what brought that to?
Hmm.
What made that one of your babies here in the city?
So I'm gonna tell you, whenever we say call your council member, reach out to your elected official. If you have an issue, give them a call. That's how that came to rise. When I ran for office, like I said, my background was in organizing and food issues. I didn't know anything about trafficking. Obviously, I knew it existed like everyone else, but it wasn't something that I was an area of expertise or focus for me. And then I had a constituent reach out to my office. At the time, that constituent was a counselor at Western High School and mentioned that one of their students had gone missing and was being trafficked in D.C. and their parents were looking for her, the little girl, and they ended up finding her. But my constituent came to me and literally, I want to say I was at a community meeting and pulled me to the side and was like, look, you got to do something about human trafficking, shared the story with me about the little girl, and it was heartbreaking for me. And so, the first thing I did was call a hearing. At the time, I was on the education committee on the city council. And so I reached out to the education chairperson for that committee. I forgot to mention it in my sort of civics class, and I'm happy to do a longer civics 101. I have a presentation that if you wanted me to bring it back on, I could do a deeper dive into a lot of the city operations. But the chairperson for that committee put together a hearing for me, a public hearing, so we could just hear from survivors, hear from organizations that help people, hear from law enforcement agencies on like what was going on in the city of Baltimore. And I'll tell you, to date, that was the hardest hearing I've ever been a part of, man. My eyes are watering, like hearing the stories of what people had gone through, hearing the struggles of the organizations that do the work to try and help people and really didn't have the money to do everything that needed to be done to address this issue. And also just, as I started to look at the city's, codes and laws around it, wasn't really a lot of work being done to coordinate the city's efforts to end this issue in Baltimore City. And so after that hearing, I worked with then Mayor Pugh to get her to hire a human trafficking coordinator. And this gentleman that's actually still with the city, his name is Tom Sack. And so he works in the mayor's office of criminal justice. And he and I created the first ever Baltimore City Human Trafficking Collaborative, which has since grown to over 55 member partners. So that's law enforcement, community-based organizations, advocates, faith leaders, church leaders, hospitals. I mean, you name it, they're here. Survivors. We have several subcommittees that now work across a number of issues, from public awareness to victim services to helping me write laws and policies, working with the state task force. There's a state of Maryland Human Trafficking Task Force that we are a part of. So we've grown to the biggest local task force in the state of Maryland. And part of it, we also have some of the biggest challenges in the state of Maryland, right? So a lot of it has to do with our location and proximity to DC, to New York, just being along the 95 corridor, where, a lot of traffickers move between states. We're in the wealthiest state, or one of the wealthiest states in the country. So there's a lot of money here. There's casinos, there's truck stops, there's ports. And so all of the things that that traffickers sort of rely on, and you framed it in the right way. It's slavery. It's a modern form of slavery that is a global billion-dollar business. And so that makes it incredibly challenging to work on. But since we started with our task force, I mentioned that money piece. For the last 2 years, and I think this will be a third, we've gotten out so far over $600,000 to community-based organizations that help victims get out of that life and return to normalcy, which has been a huge boost. We have a new partnership with all of the hospitals in the city of Baltimore to better help them identify potential victims of human trafficking or domestic violence or sexual abuse, called the Blue Dot campaign. I don't really want to go into what it does, but it is the first of its kind in the region, just to protect the anonymity of the program, but it's an amazing program. We've increased the training of hotel workers and staff. I've passed bills that require the posting of the human trafficking hotline in every hotel, restaurant, bar, restaurant. When that was still rolling out, but I'll say one anecdote that made me feel amazing was we had our last task force meeting. I found out that we passed this bill requiring the posting of the human trafficking hotline inside of hotel rooms in the back door, and we got word from one of our hospital partners that they had a victim come in after calling that number, and that the victim saw on the back of the hotel room door. And ended up saving her life because she didn't know the hotline existed at all and not how to get help at all. And so was able to leave that trafficker from that bill. And so I was so thankful, man. It teared up because it was like, something like this, you don't really know if it's going to work or not. And who knows how many other lives we'll save with it, but we got one. And it was a bill we just passed last year. And so it showed me that we're heading in the right direction, but there's still a tremendous amount of work that needs to be done to raise awareness in our community about this issue. And it goes beyond just sex trafficking. There's a lot of issues with, how we treat, you mentioned it, domestic servitude, and construction workers and employees are often, may not always have their proper immigration papers. And so sometimes they'll be trafficked to come in and do work and get their wage garnished or, it's a lot, man. It's devastating to hear what people go through and what people are put through in the form of slavery. So what I do want to, while I have, a couple minutes or a minute, but while you brought it up, I do want your listeners to know that if they have any concerns about potential trafficking or a potential situation that just doesn't seem right, they can call the National Human Trafficking Hotline at 1-888-373-7888, or you can text HELP to BEFREE, which the number for that is 233-733. You can text that number if it just seems out of place. It's always, one of those things where maybe if it seems off, just go ahead and report it. And so that, we can make sure that, if there are any red flags, that they're investigated. The last thing I would ask people to do, if you're on Facebook or Instagram, you can search for the Baltimore City Human Trafficking Collaborative. Follow us on social media. We're going to be launching some online trainings. We were doing in-person trainings before the pandemic all across the city of Baltimore just to educate people on what human trafficking was and how it can be prevented. We're going to be taking that online since we can't do stuff in person right now. So follow us on social media as well.
All right. So we're going to get that information up on the website after this interview. And I want to thank you. From the bottom of my heart for you to come on and give you a little bit of time right now. This right here, anytime that you want to come on, this is your platform. Anything that you have going on, anything you want to get out here to the community, this is your platform. I really want to thank you for coming on today. Like I said, we had a great conversation. We learned a lot of things. Hopefully, a lot of the listeners out here learned a lot of things. So, guys, Councilman Burnett, 8th District, Emerson Village, Irvington, 10 Hills, Dickey Hill, all of that. If you're in this area, go ahead, follow this man on Instagram, Facebook, whatever. Councilman, I appreciate everything. I appreciate you coming through. And like I say, anytime you want to come back, come on through.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
No problem. And enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
You too.
There you go, you guys. You just heard it. Councilman Burnett, Baltimore City. Like I said, human trafficking, the signs, you see the signs. Anything is not looking right. You think it's something, you see some child that's with someone and they looking right now like they, Lord, nervous, like they want to say something. Don't be nervous. Even if, if you do say something and it comes to find out that it's not what you thought it was, but the parent can really probably appreciate, but that it's someone out here that's actually looking out. But we learned a lot of things. And like I said, we're going to have the councilman on here again. So is any other questions, any other concerns, any other things that you want to learn about, that you want to know anything about here that's going on here in our city right now? Just holler at your boy. StreetzTalk Podcast. We here for you. So whatever you want, whatever you need, we here for you. So like I said, I want to thank the councilman for coming on here today. I want to thank my viewers, my listeners. Like I say, this is going to be up later on today on podcasts, on all podcast streaming sources. So, again, I want to thank you guys for coming on out today. We'll be back again. StreetzTalk Podcast. We here for you, shorty. We out of here. Peace.